Hello everyone and welcome to Linux. Today we're going to be talking about kind of the basics of using Linux and how you go about basic management actions with a Linux server. We're going to be focusing on CentOS because CentOS I find provides the best balance between stability and reliability. However, a lot of this stuff is almost the same if not identical on other distributions like Debian or Debian based such as Ubuntu. Things like that. So we're working with CentOS, which is kind of the free version of Red Hat Enterprise. And so a lot of the commands will transfer over, but some of them will have some differences, like yum versus apt-get, whatever. Anyhow, so the way you actually connect to the server, and I might as well say this real quick first, if you're watching this, you're either probably A, a subscriber to my channel or interested in learning Linux some other way, or B, you were referred here by me at VPS Craft. I told you to go here to kind of learn the basics of the command line. So before we get any further and before this time's out of me, I'm going to log in real quick as the username root and the password, blah blah, and then we can talk for a long time. Okay, so yeah, if you're a VPS Craft customer, some of the stuff we're going to be doing in this tutorial is already set up for you. We're working with a completely clean image here, and if you bought a VPS Craft server, you already have a lot of stuff installed and ready to go for you, and so you won't have to worry quite as much about most of the stuff in the beginning of this video. However, it might still be good to know, and if you don't want to learn it, you can just skip right ahead. So, for just normal Linux, this is a completely clean install. It's a fresh install of CentOS 6 64-bit edition. It's running on, it's a VPS slice that's been dedicated 10 gigabytes of RAM, and it's running on a node with an Intel i7 3770. So that's just kind of some general specs for you, and I'll show you actually how you can view all that information yourself once you get a server to make sure you're not being ripped off or anything. And so we're just going to go through a couple actions here, a couple commands. So in this tutorial we're going to cover basic navigation, like file navigation, and we're going to try to do a couple analogies, if you will, to Windows and how Windows works. We're also going to try to hit file permissions, and I'm hoping to talk about the basic directories of Linux and where you're going to find certain stuff and other stuff, and what folders you probably really don't have much use being in that aren't going to be very useful to you, and the ones that you'll find yourself in a lot. And how to install software, and how to download files. So a lot going on today. It's going to take probably about 30 minutes or so if I had to guess, but you know my videos tend to run long. So here we go. So for basic navigation of the file system, your main commands are going to be ls and cd. cd is change directory, ls is list. It lists all the files. And each one has certain things that can be done with it. For example, cd ... means go up one directory. pwd is print your working directory. And my working directory is /root right now. If I go cd ... that takes me one directory up. That's like clicking the back arrow in any kind of file explorer. So we'll press enter. And then we're one directory up. So if we do pwd again, we're just at this slash. Each time you see a slash in any kind of directory, it denotes kind of a new folder, like /root /games would denote the folder games inside of the folder root. So let me type that out for you real quick. /root /games would be the folder games inside the folder root. However, if it was root games backgammon, that's not even how you spell it, it'd be the folder backgammon in the folder games in the folder root. So each one of these little slashes here, and that's just the slash right next to the shift key, the / I think, each one of those denotes a new folder. And you can't go to a folder that doesn't exist. So if I wanted to make a folder, I do mkdir make dir, make directory, and then whatever I want to call the directory. So let's say fun. So now I've created the folder fun, so I can cd into fun. And it's perfectly fine with that. I can cd out. And what if I try to cd into a directory that doesn't exist? For example, fun2. No such file or directory. Make dir fun2, cd fun2, and all of a sudden it works. So I'm going to cd out again. The ls command shows you all the files and folders in your current directory. So if you're on /root, it'll show you all the folders in it. So for example, it'd show you /games if there was a games folder in your root directory. So ls, and this, we are at the very top of our file system. This is like being right inside the C drive. kind of similar, but it's almost like kind of where you see your C drive and D drive and floppy and Blu-ray drive and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of a hybrid of those, because you do have all your system folders here, but inside of some of these folders you also have mount points for other drives and stuff like that. So real quick, I'm not going to go through all these folders, just kind of some of the ones you may find more important, and some of the ones that I just think are cool. So starting from here, bin is binaries. They're a lot of the programs you'll be using for a lot of stuff. There's really not much reason to be in there per se, but it has a lot of things that you'll be using either directly or indirectly. You often just won't need to be in the directory to do so. For example, we have this folder called PWD. We used that earlier. PWD is print working directory. For another example, let's see, what else do we use here? Oh, well, whatever. We'll use chmod later. That's in here. We will use kill probably in the next tutorial. That's right there. mkdir, we already used that. ls, we've already used that. So these are just kind of like a lot of commands will line up very nicely with these. For example, rpm has to do with Red Hat Package Manager packages, which are like programs. rm is remove, rmdir, remove directory. So a lot of these you'll find yourself using, and this is where the actual program is located in case you're wondering. Let's take another look at those folders. Boot contains, let's actually go into it, it's kind of cool. Boot contains basically the stuff that's used when your server boots up. Now in a VPS, there's a lot of times not a lot inside of the boot folder because things like the kernel and things of that nature are handled by the OpenVZ host. Now that's more complex than I want to get today, but just know if you're using OpenVZ virtualization, then you don't have your own kernel. You share a kernel with the other VPSs, which actually improves performance but decreases your ability to run custom OSs and modify kernels and stuff of that nature. You just can't do it. Alright, etc is where a lot of the configuration files for your system are stored. Things like, for example, IP address bindings or network settings, things like that are in etc. Fun and fun2 are just directories we created. Home is where if you have multiple users on the system, which is a good idea. We probably won't get into that today, but maybe we will. Home is basically where things like people's personal documents and those things would be. Lib is a bunch of libraries and things. You probably don't need to worry too much about that. Proc, you probably don't have to worry about either. Proc is cool though, I want to show you. It shows you all the process IDs or PIDs of things that are running, plus a lot of cool stuff here that's just kind of random. Like for example, CPU info is all the info that the kernel knows about our processor, our CPU. So I'm going to do vi CPU info, and later we're going to install a better text editor, but vi is just to get us started here. So it says my processor, my vendor ID is genuine Intel. It is an Intel Core i7-3770 at 3.4 gigahertz. Stepping is 9. It's at 3,401 megahertz. Not 3,400, 3,401. Big difference. These are the CPU flags it has. What else is actually useful information? Cache sizes might be kind of interesting stuff. That's the majority. You'll see this repeating because there's multiple cores on the system. That's why you'll see the same information repeated over and over. You have processor 3, 2, 1, and 0. The reason I don't have 8 is because I have hyperthreading disabled. Because for running Minecraft servers and stuff, hyperthreading usually is just a detriment because it confuses OpenVZ. So Control-Z exits a program, so pressing just Control and Z will be like, alright, VI, I'm done. It stops that process. Now, it doesn't necessarily completely kill it. A lot of times it still keeps locks on things, but it stops it, it pulls you out of it. So it's close enough. What else? Let's see, get out of here. We also have sbin. Sbin's more, it's kind of like the bin folder, but it has a lot of things used for system administration. Let's go in and see. For example, fsck is file system check. IP tables is your firewall. What else might you find important? that's probably about all will be. Su login is when you want to like authenticate as root from another account. Restart is a program that you never guess it restarts the system. Those are probably the ones you'd be actually interested in. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, but as far as actually usable things that you often find that you're going to use, that's probably just about it. And so anyway, what we also have here, we have user, which contains like some user files and stuff of that nature, and var, which is a folder that's var is really kind of weird. It's like it's kind of hard to describe. Basically, it's kind of like changing files that are in the system. Like, let's go into var real quick. You'll see a lot of things that are currently reserved or locked or somehow in use by the system, and it has a lot of files that really, it's kind of a peek into what's going on inside your system. They're files that are being changed a lot, temporary files for programs, will either be in temp or sometimes in var. One other folder I wanted to mention was, where is it? Dev. Dev is basically where you'll find your like devices. Dev stands for devices. Things like disk drives, hard drives, anything that the kernel recognizes as a device. So let's go into dev real quick. It's a cool folder. There's tons of stuff here, and a lot of these are just kind of random looking, but for example, you'll see RAM, which is a file representation of your RAM. You'll see RAM disk, which is actually a way to use part of the hard drive as kind of pseudo RAM. It's kind of like fake RAM. So you'll see a lot of stuff here that's just how the kernel understands a lot of your devices and things. So there's really not much reason for you to be in here. There's not much you're going to be doing in here. It's just a cool folder. So moving on, we talked about basic moving around and stuff. So let's go into a folder. Say, let's go into home. No, let's go into root. And let's install a program. So, let's install Nano, that text editor I was talking about. So the way you install programs on Windows usually is you download like a .msi or a .exe or something of that nature, and you open it up, and it says, alright, I'm installing, and you click next, 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 and it's like, alright, you're done, you're good, ready to go, and it's like, cool. So Linux has a similar kind of thing. It does a lot of the install process for you, and the CentOS version of package management or package installation is called Yum, Y-U-M, and it's both delicious and stands for Yellow Dog Update Manager. Yellow Dog Update Manager, yeah, okay. And it's basically a system for searching for and installing software. So yum install and nano. If I wanted to search for everything called nano, I do search nano. So let's see what that yields. Alright, so the only nano that it found was this, which is fine. That's what we want to install. So yum install nano. By default, it's going to choose that one because that's the closest match. But if there were multiple versions, that would probably install the 32-bit version by default. It depends. So, is this okay? Yes. Is this okay? Yes. And Nano's installed. So now if we do Nano, it opens up this pretty little text editor. Such a nice interface. Nice and clean. So, I personally prefer it to VI. Some people like VI better than Nano. It's just a personal preference. If you're on a VPS Craft server, Nano is already there for you. It's already installed. So let's install something that doesn't by default come with Yum. So let's say we want to install Java. So Yum search Java. I want to install Java. Yum, what do you have? And we look through this, you'll see a lot of things that don't really look at all relevant. Avalon, LogKit, JavaDoc, that doesn't look very useful. Java CC demo. What's Java CC? You'll see a lot of things that don't really look like what you want, and the answer is they're not what you want. The closest one you're probably going to find is this Java OpenJDK. OpenJDK is kind of like a spin-off. It's a privately made kind of, but with the community version of Java, And I find it's just not quite as good as regular Java. It's sometimes behind, and it often has lower performance. So we want to install the actual version of Java. Now, on the OpenEffect, I host a Java file that I just often download when I'm setting up VPS. So I'm going to grab that real quick. The openeffect.com/CentOS. No, actually, JRE7U10 Linux i586.rpm. wget is grabbing a file from the internet and downloading it to your computer, to your server, and then after wget you put in the address of the file you want to download. I want to download an RPM file. It's called JRE7U10 Linux i586.rpm, and it's on the site theopeneffect.com. So everything looks all good. I could also put other commands for like, I want to download this file, but I want to call it something else or whatever. But I'm good with that. And it's warning, not found. Oh, i586x64. Sorry about that. We are on a 64-bit system, as I'll show you in just a second. As you can see, download speed's a whopping 4 megabytes per second. That's because actually of limits on what the openeffect.com is hosted on. This server can go a lot faster, and I'll show you that in just a second. RPM, so if I do ls, it shows me that I have my Java RPM there. ls-ls will allow me to see everything that I have. It'll show me more information. So we'll talk more about this in just a minute, but actually probably next episode. But essentially this is the size in bytes of the file. This is the file permissions. This is its name. This is when it was created, etc., etc., etc. Actually, sorry, this is in kilobytes. This is in bytes. So a little bit of a difference because it's 54 megabytes, so it's 54,068 kilobytes. So if we want to install an RPM package, we do rpm-uvh. UVH can change. You can look it up for yourself, or maybe I'll cover it in another tutorial. There's just so much to cover what those actually mean. But generally, capital U, lowercase VH is going to install most packages the way you want. But there may be some customization you want there. Not going to worry too much about that. JRE7U10 Linux x64.rpm, and press enter, and it installed Java. Now these errors are normal. It's really not an issue with anything going wrong. Java will still work perfectly fine. It's just yelling at you about something or another. It's like a grumpy old person who you gave him coffee and it was half a degree Celsius too low. That's Java. So now if we type Java, it'll tell us all our information, such as the version of Java that we're running. Should tell us information. Oh well, anyway, just being able to run the Java command and showing this shows that Java is installed. So let's get one more file, the OpenEffect.com CentOS HTOP i686.rpm. And HTOP is now installed. HTOP, by the way, if you're on a VPS Craft server, HTOP and Java are already installed for you. HTOP is a program that's kind of like the equivalent of the Task Manager. Now there is a program called TOP, which is automatically included, and it's kind of lame. Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie at all. It's pretty lame. So we have HTOP, which makes it all pretty. And HTOP gives you more information about your machine and makes management faster, more efficient, and in some cases possible. So up here you'll see all of our 4 CPUs. Each one of these is a core of our i7. You'll see the total memory we have used. This computer, this VPS anyway, has 10 gigabytes of memory and we're using 20 megabytes of it. So, you know, pretty good. And swap. Swap space is kind of like on-disk storage for moving things around. In a way, that's kind of a good way to think about it. Load averages are a good indication of how hard your CPU is working. Uptime is how long the server's been running. And tasks tell you how many processes are running. Now, often, if you have a VPS Craft server, you'll go into here and you'll see 50 lines that are all Java and your server, and they all look identical except for maybe the time and the CPU and memory usage and some of these numbers over here. And the reason is because they're either different threads of the program or different parts of the program in different areas, so that's nothing to worry about if you see multiple of the same program. As well, some of the programs in here you don't really need. For example, I don't really need send mail to be accepting connections, whatever. So say I want to kill send mail. I press F9, and then I find whatever I want to tell it. I'm going to do sig power, and send mail suddenly dies. Let's do that to the next one. You can also type the numbers. Say I want a sig kill. I type 4, press enter, and send mail's gone. Now, most of these will work for most things. I find sig kill works best if you want to kill a runaway Java process. And if that doesn't work, try sig power and sig sys. As well as, where is it? Sig IoT doesn't really do quite as much, but that's sometimes also pretty useful for killing other processes in like Python sometimes. Anyway, just random. Control Z again exits the program. And what else do I want to talk about? Let's see. File permissions are pretty important. Yeah, we'll talk about file permissions. So if I do ls, I'll see I have 2 files here. And if I do ls-ls, you'll see I have information about each one of them. Now let's make a start.sh file. And inside of this sh file, it's a .shell file.sh. It's similar to a windows.bat file. And it basically is just a list of commands that I can call it and it runs. Let's say we want to wget. What's the cachefly URL? Here, let me look this up real quick. Cachefly 100 MB test. And we'll go to cachefly here, and we'll go 100 megabyte test, copy link address, cachefly.net/100mb.test. So wget http:// www.cachefly.cachefly. What? Let's get rid of the www. It doesn't have it there. A lot of times you can just leave that out or put it in, and Linux will figure it out for you. But .net/100mb.test. And let's just have it do that. That's all it'll do. And press yes and enter. And chmod a+x start.sh. Wait, let's do ls-ls first. ls-ls shows us that start has read-write, read-read permission. So we'll get into a little bit more of what that actually means in just a minute. But let's chmod a+x start.sh. Now ls-ls. You'll now see it as read, write, execute, read, execute, read, execute. So what does chmod a+x do? Well, in this case, it basically gave execute permissions to everyone. X for execute, and A for all people. So now if we wanted to, you'll see now start.sh is green instead of white. Green means it's executable. It's a program you can run. So start.sh will run that program. Unable to resolve host address cachefly.cachefly. I spelled it wrong. Nano start.sh. Spelling is very important. Cachefly. Let's try that again. Start.sh. This is an accurate representation of the internet speed on this machine. Looks like 84 megabytes per second. So that's pretty good. 84 megabytes per second. That's about 640 megabits per second. So a little over half a gigabit per second. A lot of these servers are on 1 gigabit lines. We market them as 100 megabits, but a lot of times they're put on 1 gigabit lines just because they're kind of extra and laying around. So this looks like a 1 gigabit line being shared between a couple VPS slices. So if we run that again, /start.sh, you'll see it goes slower. That's either because someone else on the node is using a lot of data, or cachefly is a bit busy, or we just downloaded it, so it's kind of like throttling us again. It's good to run it a couple times. You'll see that time it was 91. So let's talk about a little bit of file management here. If I wanted to delete a file, it's sadly not as easy as delete 100mb.test. Unfortunately, that does not work. rm-f, however, remove file 100mb.test does work. If we now ls, you'll see that file is gone. So let's. I don't want to retype that command. That takes too much time. So I'm going to press the up arrow key and the up arrow key again. And the up arrow key just goes back into your history. You can also type history, and it'll show you all the commands you've run. Isn't that useful? So else again, rmf 100mb.test.1, .2, and don't need start.sh, don't need Jerry 7010 Linux x64.rpm, don't need HTOP, x86.rpm, and nice clean folder. There's nothing in it. So we've gotten this far. We've downloaded files, deleted files, made folders, looked at files. We've done a little bit with permissions and running shell scripts and what shell scripts do. We've downloaded files. So what can we do next? What about copying files? So nano copy me bro.txt, and inside we'll put random jargon. So Control X, Y, enter is exit. Do you want to save? Yes. And then enter is saving it as the file name that it thinks you're probably going to want. If I just do nano like this, then when I exit it'll ask me what I want to save it as. Unless I leave it blank, in which case it doesn't. So ls again, or just ls, will show us what we have in our directory, copy me bro.txt. Now cp is copy me bro.txt, copy me bro2.txt. And now if we ls again, suddenly we have two of those files. This is the source and this is the destination. So there's a distinction there. If I wanted to copy well, let's make a directory. So original. cd directory. We gotta have something in it too. Nano start. Hi. Exit. Yes. ls. You'll see, by the way, start has absolutely no extension. That's okay. Linux doesn't mind. So we now have a folder called directory, and we have a file in it, and we want to copy that entire directory, including that file. So we have to copy it recursively, which means everything down inside of it. cp-r. R is the recursive flag. It tells it to go down into the folder. Directory new dir. ls. We now have a directory called new dir. cd new dir. Dir ls, and start is there. Nano start, and boom. Hi. What if I want to remove a directory? Well, could I just do rmf new dir? Nope, I can't. I have to do rm-rf new dir because it's telling it to delete recursively. If it didn't delete recursively, it would delete that folder, but everything else inside of it would be left, which is why they don't let you do it. It's kind of a silly system. It seems like, well, if I'm deleting a directory, why doesn't it just say, oh, poof, you're gone? The main reason is because, one, that's a couple extra lines of code when writing the program, and two, the main reason is because a lot of times if you're doing rm-f, you're trying to delete a file. If you accidentally deleted a directory, that could be a really big deal. Linux, command line Linux like this, doesn't have a recycle bin. If you delete something, it is gone. There's no recycle bin to go to and empty. There's no undelete button or key. You better have some good forensic software if you want that file back, because guess what? It is gone. And that is the thing with Linux. It is powerful, and it does exactly what you say. If you say, hey, Linux, delete yourself. Okay, master, it deletes itself. Crap. So you got to be really careful what you delete and what you're doing with file operations. Double check your commands before pressing enter for anything that's non-trivial, and always check your syntax. So I think that's enough for today. We'll talk more about file permissions next time. We'll also talk about maybe user accounts. I don't know. I don't really like user accounts. We'll talk about like making a basic Minecraft server and getting that running, and then the tutorial after that we'll talk about firewalls and stuff like that probably. This is all kind of tentative, I'm not quite sure. Remember, PUTTY's in the description below. If you want to buy a server from me, yay. There's a link in the description below to the site where I sell the servers. They're based in Europe right now. I think that's about it, so thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.